I did planning.
Yay, Avery.
Woo, I did the bare minimum.
Avery and Spencer are the backbone of this podcast.
Yeah, right. Gabe's the one over here being like, I got us interviews, and I have all these notes on Naked and Afraid, and I know everything about America's Next Top Model.
If you want to see Cycle 4, then please comment about it, because I feel like that's a podcast all on its own.
4 was a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we're going back quite a bit further than Cycle 4 of America's Next Top Model. If I can get Perry's fur out of the fandom non-specific time machine.
Perry, not on camera. This is highly inappropriate, Perry.
Perry, not for free.
Yeah. People don't do this for free anymore. You have them pay you for this.
You can put her down on the floor.
Well, I don't want to interrupt her in this very sensitive moment.
Perry, come here.
Okay, here. I'm sorry, Perry. You have to.
Oh my god.
Slinky noodle. Here you go, Perry. I'm sorry. Hello and welcome.
Welcome to Pop Culture Curiosities, where me and Gabe and Perry sometimes we all talk about. Well, Perry doesn't talk. That we know of. Here we talk about pop culture stories that interest us, and sometimes we generally, at least once, talk about our own experiences on set, working as extras and stand-ins and things like that in the Atlanta film industry. So today we're going back a little further than TV, though. We're going to the world of the Golden Age radio. Going back to 1938.
Ah, we're going to talk like this into the microphone. Little Perry is running around the room. Oh, she is being adorable. Oh, no. What is that? Oh, no.
I'm sorry. There's cat fur all over you.
Well, yeah, I was doing my hand motion, but then fur flew on my face, and I'm like, but it's fine.
Sorry.
I love cats. It's all good. No one can help this. Going back in time.
We're going back to the 30s.
Wow, that's so... not long ago, yet long ago at the same time.
So fun fact, I was telling you about this, but I didn't know about this. This podcast episode in our time will be actually posted on the 85th anniversary of all of this happening, which is just a weird coincidence that I couldn't have planned if I wanted to. So,
yay.
The fur in my nose is going to drive me crazy.
Oh, no. You're just going to be talking. Oh, gosh. It's like when I was reading Model Land when I wasn't feeling good, and I was just like...
Yeah. But were any of us feeling good on Model Land?
No.
No.
Tyra's gonna come back and be like the nicest person to us. And we're gonna be like, oh.
That's how she's gonna get revenge.
She's gonna be like, here, come to this con that I'm making.
TyraCon.
We come in, there's a single ball pit, and we're like... Anyway.
The ball pit is going to be filled with whipped cream. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Tookie repellent.
Get back.
Back, Tookie. Anyway.
All right.
If you know, you know.
So, let me pull up. I actually have very extensive notes on this one.
Chunky bunny.
I forgot I had it pulled up.
3D Chungus.
A 3D Chungus.
I feel like I shouldn't be saying that.
Chungus?
I don't know.
I don't know. Spencer can be the judge of that. I think it's...
We trust in your judgment, Spencer. Sorry if I'm in your camera.
It's fine. If you're in my camera, it's because I set the camera up wrong.
Oh.
All right, so it's 1938. The stock market has crashed.
Oh gosh, why isn't everything in sepia tone?
We need to put on that setting. We're in sepia tone now.
Wow, sepia tones. Interesting.
Wow, it's almost black and white, but there's also a weird brown color.
Huh. Feel like there should be a tornado in Kansas or something.
Yeah. All right, so it's 1938. The stock market has crashed. Hurricanes have swept the East Coast. Wars are raging overseas. Evil dictators are gaining power. It sounds a lot like 2023, but it's not. It's 1938.
Oh, look, history's repeating itself.
Wow.
Perry, no.
Perry, no.
Perry's just like, I want to hear about the wars.
Perry, you monster.
Plot twist, she's a giant kaiju that's really small.
Audio-only media is the big thing right now. But unlike 2023, it's not podcasts. It's just the golden age of radio. I didn't know this. Radios were not only newfangled tech back then, but they were recently made accessible to the middle class. So, like, this would be, like, a big community thing where, like, people didn't have money to go to the movies, but they would all gather in one house, like, everybody on the block to, like, listen to popular radio shows. Which is wholesome. This is the era in which Orson Welles' infamous War of the Worlds broadcast went down. And there's a lot more to this story than you might think on the surface, and it just keeps getting better. I love this story. It starts with Orson Welles himself. Orson Welles is a famous actor and writer. He's probably most known for that little movie, Citizen Kane, that all the film douches want to brag about having seen. Sorry, I was trying to think of a nicer. No shade if you like Citizen Kane. It's a good movie. It's just there's so many guys in, like, the film scene that are like, well, Citizen Kane is the best movie of all time. How can you have not seen Citizen Kane? Have you not seen Citizen Kane? It's 10:15 p.m. Do you know where your Citizen Kane is?
I want to just take all those people, put them in a room, and just play MILF Manor.
Yeah.
This is what you get. Anyway.
Suffer!
Exactly. Citizen Kane cannot save you now.
But Orson Welles was also kind of the king of Golden Age radio. I didn't know. So Orson Welles, I knew, was very big on radio because he had a lot of theater experience and he was a really good voice actor. Like, he would voice, like, multiple characters in one broadcast at a time and people didn't even know. And so he was really well trained for, like, you know, radio broadcasts were done live. They needed people who could do a lot of voices, so he was perfect, right? This is kind of, you know, where he gained a lot of his fame. He gained a lot of his fame in theater before that. He and his producer partner once, I guess, they were hired by, like, the governmental, theater program, like one of those, and then they put on a pro-union show, and then they got fired.
Aww.
Which feels relevant right now. Support the strike, support the union.
Yes.
So, Perry, you need to get down, honey.
Okay. Perry. Here, just find your cap and find your hat and defeat the evil doctor.
Agent-P. Doobie doobie doo ba doobie doo. Sorry, I'm just buying time because Perry.
Perry's like, my work here is done.
My sinuses. Get down.
Perry,
I love you, but get down. So, War of the Worlds, I just copied from study.com. I found just the summary of War of the Worlds, which was written between 1895 and 1897. My brain was like, 1800s? There were people back then? War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells is about a fictional invasion of southern England by Martians. The military is powerless against the Martian superpower weapons, and many people die. But then, spoiler alert to this hundreds-year-old book, the Martians are eventually killed by bacterial infection. Their bodies weren't prepared for the Earth flu, and they died.
Congratulations.
I also have a note in here about how it's funny because ARG's alternative reality game are very big on YouTube, you know, with things like post content or Local 58. You have these channels that are projects which are horror projects using online content to make it feel more immersive. So it's scarier because it feels like there's this part of your brain where it's like, I know it's not real, but it could be real. Like, it's presented to me in a way that like I'm supposed to think for a second that it's real. And those are really popular. And I think Orson Welles would really enjoy that. I think he'd be a big Local 58 fan. Orson Welles, I have in my notes, he was very extra. He'd been toying with the idea of putting together a radio drama that would feel interactive to the audience and feel like it was happening in real time for a while. And he decided, what better time to test out this kind of experimental horror genre than with my Halloween episode. So he took War of the Worlds, the book, and he kind of reworked it with his scriptwriters so that they changed the locations. They chose a real place in New Jersey for the first like Martian sighting to happen. They chose to set it up so that it sounded like the story was happening in news bulletins, which were coming through to break into regularly scheduled just like orchestra programming. And it's worth noting that, like, at this time, this was 1938, it had only been a few years before that people had heard bulletins breaking in about the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. Just, I think the year previously, which also happened in New Jersey, was the Hindenburg crash, which people got updates in bulletins on the radio. And also, Germany invaded Austria 3 months prior to this, and Americans heard all of this like in blow by blow, just kind of horrified on the radio. So like this was a very established way of getting information, which is important to really think about when it's just like, well, how did people believe that Martians were landing in New Jersey? How did we get here? So I lost my place again. I'm sorry, Spencer. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so he decided to have his radio play. Unfold like it was real news broadcasts happening in real time. What could go wrong? It's actually genius how they did this, because when you listen to it, it's actually a pretty big feat of voice acting and just live production of this whole thing. Like, the show became popular not only for having a great orchestra and great actors, but they were great at Foley live in the studio. Like, they would do things like flush toilets and make it sound like oars rowing in the water of canals. Oh. They, I guess, took a cleaver to a big cabbage live on air for the guillotine sound of the Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh.
Like, they were good at it. Like, they would, back in that day, you know, they'd have to do all those sound effects live on air, and they would use like aluminum. They'd use a big aluminum sheet, and they'd rattle it, and it would sound like a big storm, like a big thunderstorm, like wind and all that stuff. They were really good at it. People really, really liked this show. It was known for having really good production. And they brought all that into play for this, the most infamous of radio productions ever. So before you go thinking Orson Welles was super careless, it's important to point out they did announce at the beginning of the show a disclaimer saying, hey, this is a broadcast of like a dramatic retelling of War of the Worlds. And they said, you know, by Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater Company, like they told people that. And then also it started with Orson Welles giving a dramatic monologue inspired by, but not directly from the book. Told from the perspective of his character from the future, talking about the past events of that night. So, like, it would be very obvious if you caught it from the beginning that this was just a show. However, much like with live streams nowadays, like, by the time you're ready to, like, sit down and watch it, it's a few minutes past the hour. So a lot of people missed that part.
Ooh.
Yeah. So what they heard was just like an orchestra. And it sounded like what plays before the show starts, like when they're just trying to fill time. And I think a lot of people, too, just kind of didn't necessarily tune in to be like, ooh, I want to hear that Orson Welles thing. They just kind of turned on the radio. And, like, that was what was on CBS at the time. Pay your writers, CBS.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep saying it. So, but here is a clip. So here's a clip of what they were hoping you would hear when you tuned in.
Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
So that's the intro, and then, we have a few
Ladies and
seconds
gentlemen,
later.
the director of the Mercury Theater and star of these broadcasts, Orson Welles.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water.
So, very obvious that it's a play. However, most people didn't tune in until about here. They tuned in about here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From the Meridian Room in the Park Plaza Hotel in New York City, we bring you the music of Raymond Raquello and his orchestra.
Just sounds like a normal orchestra. You're like, oh, this sounds nice. Thanks, CBS Radio. Pay your writer, CBS. The orchestra that was just brought in to just lull people into a false sense of security.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt
Then
our
they
program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote.
So they hear, this news bulletin that's like, hey, we saw weird gas explosions that had pretty lights on Mars. Which doesn't sound life-threatening. Sounds kind of interesting, I guess. So, they break in with this announcement. They say what they need to say. And then, it goes back to the orchestra. And Stephanie points out in her video that it's worth noting War of the Worlds, the book, was written in late Victorian era England, a time of prosperity, peace, there's no war. People are they have the emotional space to be like, oh boy, what if situation of what if Martians landed on the planet? But then 1938 America had lived through some shit. It's kind of like in 2020 when pandemic is happening. We had those murder hornets, and then all of a sudden people were like, NASA's like, we've been catching radio signals from somewhere out in space, and everybody's like, we don't care. Sure, aliens are real. What else is new, right? It was a very different climate that we're now updating this into live news bulletins for the people, the American people, to just be listening to. And so, we hear this broadcast, we hear this thing about Mars, and if you don't really know what's happening, you're like, oh, that's weird. Continue on. Symphony orchestra comes back. Then we get the next bulletin. There's another update. That's DashCon. Hang on. Go watch our DashCon video if you so choose.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with the noted astronomer, Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on this event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey.
So now all of a sudden, we're hearing from a leading expert, a scientist. Professor Pearson is, of course, just a character played by Orson Welles himself, who rebuffs. He's like, of course, there's nothing weird going on here. He's the rational scientific mind. Everybody's like, oh, everything's fine. It's just a weird anomaly. And then and it's worth noting too that this gives kind of credibility in your mind. You're like, okay, scientist, demystifying everything. We're all good. And we hear
more DashCon.
No, get rid of Big Chungus.
Not Chungus.
We are ready now to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carl Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer.
Famous astronomer.
Ooh.
He's got credibility.
Everyone's like, I've never heard of him.
This is Carl Phillips speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening,
The clock ticking in the background just for ambiance. Orson Welles was so extra.
I can't tell that this is Orson Welles.
That's not Orson Welles. This is
never
another
mind.
actor. Orson
Dang it,
Welles.
never
But
mind.
Orson Welles was only 23 when he did the voice of Professor Pearson.
I'll ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides the ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone.
We've got to wait because he's doing important science things.
Ah.
He's not ready to talk to us yet.
I'm surprised we don't hear anything like bubbling
Right.
because every time in a movie.
So yeah, we're kind of lulled into a full sense of security at this point. He doesn't think the Martians are coming. Why should I think the Martians are coming?
The British were coming that one time.
The British are coming. The British are coming. It always makes me think of that Sleepy Hollow show, which I used to love before they messed it up, where he was like, "We didn't say the British were coming. We too were British. We said the regulars are coming. We too were British, so it would have been highly unhelpful."
Oh. Huh. The more you know. But I wonder if that's historically accurate or what's
I don't know.
historically accurate.
Feels historically accurate, but who knows? So now people are invested. Forget the music. We don't
Oh.
care about the music anymore. And then we hear an update. We hear another update from a rural farm town in New Jersey.
Joyzy.
Yes. Professor Pearson, rational mind, here to ease all of our troubles, has been passed a note live on air.
One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience?
Certainly, Mr. Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the Natural History Museum, New York. Quote, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Unquote. Professor Pearson, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars?
Hardly, Mr. Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence.
You'll notice that they said 9:15, and on the East Coast it was just after 8. So, like, again, if you're listening closely, they're giving you direct and indirect clues that, like, this is not real. But if you're stressed out and just like, ooh, what am I listening to? You might just not pay attention or just think that they meant 8:15 instead of 9:15. So now, Professor Pearson and the, reporter are now headed to this rural farm town to check out a meteorite. Still doesn't sound life-threatening.
It's like, oh, just or things fall to Earth all the time. It's not too uncommon. Well, it's uncommon, but not like unreasonable.
It's not like a wipe out the species meteor, right? We're still here. But now there's an earthquake in Princeton because of, meteor science things. Things are hitting a little closer home to than Mars, I wrote. New Jersey is a little bit closer to us than Mars, so now people are a little bit more interested.
Everyone in New Jersey's like, what?
And I also put in my notes that, like, in 1938, they're like, okay, we'll update you with the next bulletin, and they go back to the music. And, like, people in 1938 didn't have the internet, they didn't have smartphones, they couldn't just be like, oh, let me look at somebody else, like, talking about it. They just had to kind of wait and be like, well, I guess CBS Pay Your People Radio is going to tell us when something important happens. And then something important does happen. Next update.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of Macmillan University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So now we have 3 explosions on Mars.
I'm just imagining, oh, yes, we're calling in the Canadian scientists. Oh, hello there.
They're like, this is bigger than us. We need Canada's help.
Oh, gosh. Oh, wait. Oh, don't you know? We will get our moose factions on that immediately if there are any threats. So we will do our best.
The moose actually cited the explosion, you know?
Just a bunch of mooses are just like, oh, hello there. Just so you know, there were a lot of explosions coming from Mars.
There was a guy on Jeopardy, and the answer was the plural of moose. And the guy said, what are Mises? And Ken Jennings goes, no.
Oh, isn't the plural just moose?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
But like, it Mises.
The little Mises. Oh, look at
the little Mises.
They're flocking towards us as and I'm just imagining their horns. Like, oh, flying mooses. Or flying moose, that'd be terrifying.
So next update, we get from... Now I'm just thinking about Flying Moose.
Sorry.
Flying Moose would be a great name for a band.
Hey, we're Flying Moose.
What's up, Denny's? Have you seen that meme where it's just like the band playing in Denny's and there's just like a mosh pit happening and then the camera goes over and it's just regular Denny's, people trying to eat and like the workers are trying to like serve food and it's just like, oh no. Anyway, in the span of 3 minutes, Professor Pearson and our beloved reporter friend Carl have made it 20 miles away to this farm. Turns out the meteor is a big metal thing.
Ah.
Looks more like a huge cylinder. Has a diameter of, what would you say, Professor Pearson?
What's that?
What would you say, what's the diameter of this?
About 30 yards.
About 30
Orson
yards.
Welles even has like, oh, what's that? I didn't hear you the first time, reporter man. just for the dramatic effect.
The color is sort of yellowish white. Its curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the...
Wait, a cylinder, yellowish white?
It's clear American. Did you hear how they made it sound like a crowd was gathering around them? Orson Welles was so extra, and it's honestly respectable. They were like, no, we're going big, or we're going home. Yeah, you could hear the crowd gathering around. You could hear pulsating sounds coming from the mysterious metal object. Now, we're about to hear on air as the big metal thing opens up. And, like, this is trickling out slowly over time. I'm skipping over, like, they added, like, eyewitness accounts that they're, like, interviewing people. They're adding all these things to the book. They're not just performing the book. So it's, like, they've really done a good job to try to immerse us all in it. So people sitting at home, I can see how some people thought this was real. But...
There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Lord, they're turning into flames. Now the whole field's covered by the woods, the barns, the gas tanks of the automobiles spreading everywhere. Coming this way now, about 20 yards to my right.
And then they cut out. They cut out because we lost signal with them.
Oh, I would have been terrified at that point.
Right?
Had I not known.
Okay, trigger warning for death and destruction in this next bulletin.
We continue now with our piano interlude.
We continue now with the piano interlude. Nice piano. Now it doesn't feel so comforting. Now I'm on edge.
What happened to the people? What happened to the reporter?
In a field east of the village of Grover's Mill, their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you hear will be that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith,
Can you
commander of
imagine?
the state militia at Trenton, New Jersey.
The state militia's now there. 40 people are dead. They're burned to death by whatever came out of the cannon. Can you imagine if you were just like thinking that this was real news?
I'd be like, huh. Oh, well, so it's not like how they did in the movie We Can't Talk About, where people get vaporized.
I never saw the movie, but no, it was the Orson Welles went hard back in the day. He was like, I'm gonna scare some people. It's Halloween, bitches.
Yeah, he succeeded. I'm
I have been
scared.
requested by the governor of New Jersey to place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law.
New Jersey is under martial law now.
Everyone in Jersey is just like,
You mean I can't leave? Sorry, New Jersey. But you know, like the military is out there. It sounds like everything's under control.
In the meantime, we take you to... Just one moment, please.
Another bulletin.
Oh.
Interrupting the bulletin.
Ladies
Bulletin
and gentlemen, I
section.
have just been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his explanation of the calamity.
Again, we're going back to the scientists. We can trust him. So he gives us a scientific run through, and we do learn that our beloved reporter Carl was taken out.
no.
Rest in peace, Carl.
Carl. No. Oh, sorry, Nancy.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special statement from Mr. Harry McDonald, Vice President in charge
Is that
of
Orson
operations.
Welles?
Yes.
Ah,
Again, he was only 23 when he did this. It was pretty impressive.
good for him.
Yeah.
He looks great.
He was very, 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 very talented.
Sorry for objectifying you.
Respectfully, Mr.
Respectful.
Wells.
You respectful now.
I mean, Stephanie
respectful.
Harlowe says in her video, she's like, oh, real talk, huge crush on Orson Welles. Young Orson Welles, old Orson Welles. I will take any Orson Welles. And I back you up on that, Stephanie. But it sounds like, even though there's been this tragedy, everything is kind of under control.
They went back into their cylinder.
In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the state militia at Trenton.
Never mind. The state militia has taken over the news broadcast
Oh no.
for government, like, safety purposes. I just had in my notes, that's comforting? Question mark?
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're experts. They got it.
The battle which took place tonight at Grover Mills has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times.
Never mind, the army's all dead.
7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders from Mars.
7,000 military men have perished, we're being told.
Crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster, or burned to cinders by its heat ray.
The Martians have taken New Jersey.
No. Everyone's just like, oh, I'm sure they're New York. It's just like, oh no, New Jersey or something. I don't know.
Now, here's the thing. We're about to hear from definitely not the president. So here's the thing. The president at the time was FDR. FDR was famous for what became known as his fireside chats, where he would be like, this newfangled radio thing, I'm going to use it to talk to the Americans. And he would just kind of talk to people, and people felt more reassured about, like, they felt like they had a better understanding about, like, what their president was doing and all that stuff. And he was very known for this. So there was an unspoken agreement between the government and the radio companies that nobody was to impersonate the president on the radio, because anybody who could do a good voice of like a mimic of the president might be able to spread some really easy misinformation because it sounds like the president. Now, this was not a legal thing, but it was an unspoken agreement. However, Orson Welles knew a guy. This guy was very good at mimicking the president. He was an actor named Kenny, and Kenny was known for his FDR impersonations. It was spot on. So technically, Kenny plays the Secretary of the Interior, but it sounds like the president. So people at home just kind of didn't hear, weren't paying attention. They just kind of slipped that in, Secretary of the Interior, and then it just sounds like the president. So it sounds like it's giving even more credence to what's happening because now the president is getting involved. FDR has been woken up in the middle of the night, you know?
Orson Welles is like, we will be the most extra.
Orson Welles was an extra queen, and we love that for him.
And I love the picture they chose. He was like hand up, just like he's in it.
He was a very good actor, very good actor, very good writer. But here's not the president.
Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us.
Can you imagine if this happened today? Like, if somebody who could do a really good Joe Biden impersonation was like, come on, man, that's a bunch of malarkey. And then people were like, the Martians are invading.
Well, then you'll have a good chunk of the population being like, I don't believe it. And then they would be right in that instance.
Well, I mean, we have, like, deep fake AI stuff going out now, and people are, like, scared about where that's going to go. But, like, Orson Welles was ahead of the curve. He was just like, I got you. I got it.
The original deep faker.
It was at about this time that the head of CBS Radio got a call at home.
Ooh. Pay your writers.
Pay your writers, CBS. So the head of the radio station gets called at home by, people are panicking. You need to stop the broadcast. Tell him to stop the broadcast. So he calls over to the radio station. Word gets to Orson Welles while they are on the radio. That, phone lines are tied up for the radio station. Phone lines are tied up for police. People are calling. People are frantic. People think it's real. You need to stop. Orson, you've girl bossed too close to the sun. I'm going to need you to not anymore. Orson Welles was a very rational, cynical person. And he was like, there's no way, right? There's no way that many people actually think Martians have taken New Jersey. There's no way. And he was like, I will give another disclaimer that this is just a radio drama, but this train stops for no one. We go on.
We must finish the performance.
So at about 40 minutes in, we get a... They kind of slip it in a way that doesn't really break the fourth wall, if you will. They do it very well, but, like, there's another, like... There's another disclaimer, like, you're listening to, the CBS radio drama, blah, 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 by Orson Welles, War of the Worlds. Of course, by this time, people are very invested. And at this point, like we heard, the government has now seized the radio station. So under this guise, we now pivot. The story pivots to just fully being, no more news bulletins. We're just hearing from, like, people trying to fight off the Martians, military bulletins and things. Now we hear people are evacuating the city. People are trying to get out of the city, out of New Jersey. The Martians have gotten to New York City. Oh, God.
Oh, everyone in New York is, like, looking out their windows. Wait a second.
Now, this escalates and escalates and escalates until it's much more obvious that this is a drama. We now hear Orson Welles' character, who is the scientist who's, like, kind of braving. He's almost like an I Am Legend situation where he thinks he's the last person on Earth. He's not, but, like, he's braving on, and then eventually, spoiler alert, the Martians are dead, killed by bacterial infection. And it kind of ends on an upbeat note, all things considered, where, like, humans persevere and get back to normal life after this, the worst of tragedies. But at this point, people are already freaked out, right? People are already calling people, things are happening. Now, how bad it actually was, we don't actually know, because we're going to get into the sensationalization by the media of it after this, but I do like at the end, Orson Welles, having been fully told what was going on at this point, gives at the end a kind of good night statement, and I think his statement is just very classic. So we're just going to play this at the end. We're going to skip ahead. The whole thing is here on YouTube if you want to listen to it. It's a really fun listen.
So 30s.
Very.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen. Out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night, so we did the best next thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS.
Pay your
You'll be
writers.
relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian, it's Halloween.
The sarcasm is killing me. I love it. It's just like, and we annihilated the CBS. Sorry, CBS. This is probably going to be a fallout. Oh, well. By the next morning, newspapers everywhere were reporting mass hysteria, including but not limited to people allegedly jumping out of windows, fleeing restaurants, screaming in churches. Apparently, they ran with this one story that's completely unverified about this one woman running into her church and being like, "The Martians are coming!" Ah!
Now, Margaret, you need to calm down. No, here, come and be with us so we can pray that the Martians go away, because that's how that works.
Most likely, much of this was exaggerated, but the exaggerated stories continued to grow as taller and taller tales, as all of a sudden the number of victims kept rising, and now it's not thousands of people who were listening and panicked, but now it's millions of people who have listened and panicked. And now, the stories become even more dramatic. And poor Orson Welles. So Orson Welles, after this broadcast, had to go directly from there to do a rehearsal where he rehearsed with his theater company at the theater for a different show that they were putting on live. So he was doing that for most of the night. So he was very sleep deprived. And he wasn't really able to just go home and figure out how bad everything had actually been for a while. But people were telling him that he was basically a murderer and that he had killed people or made people kill themselves or unalive their children and stuff. None of this, by any account that's verifiable, happened. This was just the media running with these stories, and things are getting bigger and bigger and out of control. And at one point, the next morning, they kind of catch him as he's coming out of the theater, and there's footage of news reporters all gathering around him and asking him questions, and he's like, "Look, man, we did our job. We were supposed to scare you, and we scared people. And everybody's okay. It's okay," right? Which he was right, it was. The worst thing that provably can be happened is they kept running with this story about this Hollywood actress who broke her arm because she was so panicked that she thought the Martians were coming that she in her hurry fell down the stairs or something like that and broke her arm. And Stephanie Harlowe points out that if something worse had happened, people poisoning their children so the Martians could get them or jumping out of their windows, they probably would have run with that story because this was literally everywhere. But the worst they could find was this girl with a broken arm, which very sad for her, but she didn't die, Seems like that's the most extreme thing that happened. Pretty much mostly what happened was some people did think it was real. Some people did call the police or call the station. But what happened was this was an era of switchboard operators. So basically they would call the switchboard operator and be like, "I need help, the Martians are coming." And the switchboard operators, being intelligent people, would be like, "One moment, please." And they would call over to the radio station and be like, "Hey, people are telling me that you're reporting on Martians." And they're like, "Orson Welles is girl bossing too close to the sun." And they went, "Okay." And they would call, and they would tell them on the phone before they could even a lot of times get to the police, "It's fine. It's a radio show," right? In some cases, there are some cases where we can prove people got on a train. They packed their suitcase and they got on the train to get out of the city. But then they got on the train and they realized the trains weren't shut down everybody, the radio said everything was shut down and nobody on the train seems to be panicking. And then they put two and two together and were just embarrassed and went back home, right? Some people had calls from relatives to check and be like, "Are the Martians really invading over there?" Or to be like, "Oh my God, are you gonna die? I need to say goodbye." But then they were told "It's a radio show, calm down, it's fine, it's not real." So that was more of it. But what happened was the newspapers not only had a cash incentive to sell more papers because this was a huge story, They had an incentive to make the stories more sensational, but what people forget a lot of times with the story is that at the time, radio was, like I said, the newfangled form of media. And newspapers were very threatened because now instead of buying a paper, you could kind of hear news bulletins right into your own living room. So they were really threatened by this new form of media. They thought they were going to be put out of business by radio. Radio killed the newspaper star or something. Video killed the radio star.
I've never heard of that.
It's a song. Video killed the radio star. It was on Just Dance 2.
Ah.
Anyway, I digress. So just like today, where like legacy media is like, you know, saying that all of these independent creators here on YouTube are like all spreading horrible information. Like Emily D. Baker covers like live trial coverage and then they're like, she's spreading horrible information. It's like she's watching the trial live and then like giving commentary as a lawyer. Like, it's fine. Like, it's the same kind of thing as that, where it's just kind of like the old media always has incentive to be like, you can't trust the new media. So it was kind of like this thing where they were like, look at how dangerous radio is. You can't trust radio. Look what happened. Look at how scared everybody was. And they even tried to briefly push censorship laws on radio after this, to which the radio companies were like, look, if we accidentally made a bunch of people think Martians were landing in New Jersey, what do you think the government could do if they had like control over what we could and couldn't say, right? For like propaganda purposes, right? And that kind of shut everything down because, you know, we now have the hindsight of history, and we've seen that, like, in other countries, people do, like in Russia or China, people do like, censor the internet. They censor, like, what people can see. So it is, like, media is just another propaganda tool. So basically they were like, that's not what you want. And the American people were like, you're right, we don't want censorship on, like, the easiest way of communication to get out. So that got shut down, but it got really far because people were really upset about this. And I think that's really interesting that, like, newspapers just kept pushing that, like, you can't trust radio because this one drama happened and Orson Welles was like, you guys can't be serious. There's no way you all thought Martians were landing in New Jersey. But to be fair, like, we didn't have the scientific advancements to know that there's no life on Mars. And, like, people like Nikola Tesla and other scientists were all saying that they were receiving communication from Mars. So in 1938, it wasn't that far of a stretch to be like, yeah, there are Martians that could land at any second. So, you know,
that darn science getting rid of our fantasies.
That's science. Well, I mean, now they're like, people are like, but there are aliens. That government guy that was like, no, we have aliens. And people were like, sir, this is a Wendy's.
Or didn't he bring it up during like another trial? And it's like, by the way, there are aliens. And it's like, that's all right and good. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
The thing we're actually supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, we don't care about the potential aliens, sir. We'll deal with that on another day. Thank you very much. And then there was like the thing where they were like, look, this alien body. And everybody's like, that alien looks very rubbery to me. If the aliens really are real, I'm sorry for calling you rubbery. I'm trying not to have another War of the Worlds. We're about to be on the 85th anniversary.
They're picking up this broadcast and they're like, rubbery, how dare you?
Yeah, they're just like the little egg aliens from Jimmy Neutron, voiced by Sir Patrick Stewart and Martin Short, who is very funny. And they're just like, how could they?
We will be uwu aliens no longer.
Uwu aliens.
Now I'm every time I think of this, I'm just like, uwu. And every time I think of uwu, I think of a podcast called Messy with Mike and Mac, and they're like, uwu. And so now I just think of uwu all the time. Thanks, Mike and Mac.
Spencer and I always do this when we have to like ask each other for a favor that we know is probably going to piss the other one off. It's usually me being like, Spencer, the camera broke again. And he's like, how?
I touched a cable and now it won't come up. 2 seconds later, I told you this camera is not supposed to be here, so I deleted that and then it came back up. Thanks, Spencer. Okay. 10 minutes later, Spencer.
Sorry, Spencer.
Sorry, Spencer. Uwu. Uwu. Look at our uwu. Is everything forgiven with our uwu?
We're so uwu. Please forgive us. Don't stop editing our podcast.
Please.
I'm looking for my... Oh, yeah. So Grover's Mill, New Jersey, you might have heard them say, was the real town where they said the Martians landed. And it's interesting because this has become such a, like, almost tourist attraction. This has become just, like, a famous part of Grover's Mill. Like, they're on the map because of this. And apparently... I think it was one of the scriptwriters said he just like put a pencil down on a map randomly and it happened to be on Grover's Mill and he liked the way it sounded. So that's why it's Grover's Mill. Like it was just by random happenstance. And like they really find this funny to the point where in 1988, which was just a few years, I think it was 3 or 4 years after Orson Welles passed away, sadly, on the 50th anniversary of War of the Worlds broadcast in 1988, they unveiled the 7-foot war memorial, which has like Orson Welles on it and a family like listening to the radio and the Martians being fought off by like military. Aww. And it's like they unveiled this with like a big parade to celebrate. It's like a big thing and it's actually very wholesome. Like they're just very proud of this.
Aww.
And I wrote in my final thoughts, at the end of the day, the War of the Worlds broadcast in 1938 is less of a lesson in critical thinking and not believing everything you hear. As my dad likes to say, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. Verify everything.
Yeah.
Because you never know. We're in an age of misinformation.
Oh, there have been a few times I've shared things on the internet. I'm like, oh, whoopsies. Delete that.
I've done it too. I've like, none of us are impervious to misinformation. And it's like not anybody's fault if you're like, oh, I saw this and I believed it. The only thing is just being like, oops, that was wrong. I retract that.
Yeah, because the important thing is when you see that you're wrong, don't double down on it, admit your faults, and then move on.
Yep. It's not about being perfect. It's just about being able to accept when you are wrong and take accountability for it and then move on and be like, I was wrong. Bye.
Don't Barbara Streisand yourself.
Well, and just don't be like, actually, I've heard it both ways.
I think we need to see both sides.
We really should see both sides of this argument.
Maybe the Martians should take over Earth. What exactly have humans done to help?
I saw a bunch of Gen Z kids when people were like, oh, Martians have landed. They're like, well, they'll probably do better than our leadership now. And it's like, what a low bar.
Well, I'm just I like the meme where it's the aliens going by Earth, or it's just like Earth is the place where the aliens go by and they lock their doors before continuing on. And I'm like, accurate.
Yeah. We're I once said we are the place in the like, those places in America where it's just like everybody else in America makes fun of, right? And I'm not the only person to say this, but it's like Earth is the Florida of the universe. Because people are like, well, if aliens are real, why haven't they come here yet? It's like, because they don't want to.
So, I'm sure some have tried, but they've immediately been like, nope, and flew away.
Yeah, but the lesson of War of the Worlds, it's a very funny story, and there's a lot more to it. Like I said, listen to Stephanie Harlowe's Halloween video. It's like an 1.5 hour long documentary, basically. She read like multiple books. She's done all this research. She's a big Orson Welles fan, but it's like, it's the lesson is don't take anybody's word for it, including me. Go do your own research. If I'm wrong about something, politely tell me. Don't take my word for it. I'm just a person on the internet.
Avery made this whole story up. Who is Orson Welles? He never existed.
And now we're gonna gaslight you into believing us all the time. It's the YouTuber playbook.
Oh gosh, everything I said about America's Next Top Model was wrong. None of that ever happened. Everyone was treated so good.
All the people who are on America's Next Top Model are like, wow, I wish that was true.
They're just like, I have words. Just kidding. They all deserve paid therapy by Tyra.
They do. But anyway, yeah, that was War of the Worlds.
Whoa. CBS, pay your people. And
pay your people.
Well, I could say more. If there wasn't a strike, I could say more about what happens in the movie, but I can't.
We can talk about that at a later date. The strike can't go on forever. The AMPTP has to cave eventually.
Hopefully today, because I read somewhere that they want to do it before Yom Kippur, and I'm like, good kudos to Yom Kippur for being like the pressure point.
Hell
for
yeah,
this.
Go Yom Kippur.
Everyone's gonna fast for a day normally you fast for Yom Kippur, but now a lot more people are gonna do it because they're gonna be like, thank you Yom Kippur for helping end the WGA strike, so we're all gonna fast.
Is it on October 1st this year?
No, it's on Monday.
Okay.
The 25th.
Well, as we speak right now, we are filming this episode on September the 23rd. I don't have my glasses on. I was trying to read. And as we speak right now, it's a Saturday. They have been in constant talks since Wednesday morning, and they're doing their 4th day of talks, allegedly. That's what I heard. That they're as we speak right now, they're meeting again for the 4th day with the writers, not SAG. So even if they sign this deal, SAG will still have to be, have an agreement agreed to. But the fact that they're making this much of an effort to negotiate with the writers after they said they weren't going to budge is a very good sign.
And I think they have some of the big CEOs in there, like
Bob Iger's there,
Daniel Zaslav, Daniel.
I think that's how you say his name. I don't know.
From Discovery, I think. I don't know about Netflix. One of the 3-letter acronym studios.
I feel like if Bob Iger is there and signs off on whatever they do, everybody's going to sign off on it, right? Bob Iger is the supervillain of the situation, as we know.
Maybe he can get his anime redemption story arc where he did something bad, but then he makes up for it, and you hear his tragic backstory, and you're like,
Bob Iger cannot be uwu. I'm putting that down right now.
Yeah, I'm not saying like forgive him, but I'm saying like maybe he there's still time for his like redemption-ish arc.
Redemption-ish.
Where he can like sign both agreements and end the strikes, but then we're just like,
we remember what you did, Bob Iger.
Or or remember that book where it says the North remembers, because I can't talk about a TV show version of it.
Yeah, so hopefully that happens soon. Maybe by the time they're seeing this on October 30th, maybe the strike is over. I'm gonna choose to put that out into the universe and hope that it comes true.
Please.
But yeah, we're gonna leave you guys there. Thank you for watching, or if you're just listening, thank you for listening. Watching with your ears, as I like to say. Happy Halloween. If you're seeing this on the day, tomorrow is Halloween.
Yay.
So I hope you have a good Halloween, and we will see you next week.
Yay. And like, comment nice things, subscribe, rate, review, all that fun stuff. Follow us on the YouTubes.
You could comment mean things too. It'll still support the algorithm. It'll hurt our feelings, but you'll still be supporting us. So.
My emotional state can't take any form of criticism. I'm too ooh-woo. But we have to find something to do in 1938.
Oh, God.
Can we be like, oh my gosh, you're Orson Welles. How are you?
Yeah, I think there wasn't a whole lot of great stuff going on in 38. I think I just want to head to the radio station and just be like, Mr. Orson Welles, hi. You don't know how famous this is going to be in like 85 years, but we remember.
Can we have your autograph? Can you please talk to us? All that fun stuff.
He's like smoking his famous cigars and just being like, get away from us.
That's how that's how people in cartoons smoke cigars.
He's going to be like very confused by our clothes and being like, what?
What is a blood donor?
What is a Sanderson sister?
Nothing like the Schuyler sister. Oh, can we talk about Hamilton?
I mean, it's a play. It is distributed by Disney Plus, but
dang it.
Anyway,
like, comment nice things, and we'll talk to Orson Welles for everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Happy spooky season.
Woo!